Hello, everyone. My name is Marco Lopez Valderrama, along with my classmates Sandy Macias, Reina Martinez, and Myra Valderrama Delgado. We will be discussing this week's presentation on Operation Wetback, the Bracero program, and the gasoline baths. Operation Wetback. Although talks and issues about immigration happened years prior, in 1954 Joseph Swing and Harlan Carter began Operation Wetback. Carter had a history of violent racism. He was known for killing a Hispanic teenager in his younger years. During Operation Wetback, he was the head of Border Patrol, and he believed highly in vigilante justice. He would later become the head and control of the NRA. Swing was actually a general who battled against Mexican revolutionary Pancho Villa, and together with Carter, they hoped to bring military force to Operation Wetback. Operation Wetback is set during the Eisenhower era, and it is estimated that about 1.3 million Mexicans were deported to southern Mexico. The actual number of deportees is still in question by some. Operation Wetback was designed because a strong sentiment rose against Mexicans. The name Wetback was used to describe Mexicans who crossed through the Rio Grande. There was an influx of illegal and legal immigration that was unregulated. The influx was believed to encourage low wages since illegal immigrants were willing to work for less. They also wanted jobs to be available for Americans who were returning from World War II. Because of cheap labor, greedy companies welcomed immigrants who were willing to work for less. Regarding the political side, because of the lack of jobs and sustainable living wages, Mexicans were used as scapegoats. There was also this idea of repatriation as to encourage Mexicans to return to their national and patriotic home. Although Swing and Carter pushed to have military support, Eisenhower believed immigration was a domestic issue, so only Border Patrol resources were provided. Legislators also wanted to punish companies who hired illegal immigrants, but farms pushed back, stating it would be difficult to obtain proof of citizenship. Operation Wetback used surprise raids at farms and also were provided with aerial support to round up Mexicans. To stir up propaganda, this idea was created that Mexicans were dirty, disease-bearing, and irresponsible. Sounds familiar. However, through the deportations, Mexicans faced inhumane transportation. Buses were crowded with people, and Mexicans were also crammed into boats that were comparable to slave boats. Sadly, to discourage Mexicans from returning back, the U.S. negotiated with Mexico to deport Mexicans deep into southern Mexico. Many Mexicans were unfamiliar with their new home, that it became hard to start over. Because of the harsh tactics used to round up Mexicans, some Mexicans found it beneficial to voluntarily return to Mexico. So what did Operation Wetback mean? Well, it meant that anyone could be deported. At first, Mexican Americans supported the deportation of illegal Mexicans, but they soon found out that they were also targets. It is estimated that about 60% of Mexicans deported were actual citizens that had roots of Mexico. On the other hand, if the US wants something done, they will use whatever force and support necessary to accomplish it. For example, they will stir up its citizens into thinking that an invasion is happening and we must go to war to destroy it. The influx of immigration also increased border patrol. However, cheap labor was now in demand, and companies and farms were now hungry for it since they had a taste of it.
Hello everyone, my name is Annie Macias and I will be discussing the Bracero program. So, what was the Bracero program and why was it created in the United States? The Bracero program was an executive order during 1942 through 1964 called the Mexican Farm Labor Program. It was an agreement between Mexico and the United States that allowed many Mexican men to be able to legally work within the United States for a short period of time. The program was created due to more workers being needed during World War II. Many workers left for the military, and those still at home went to better paying manufacturing jobs. This left many agriculture jobs and jobs that does not require skills with insufficient amount of workers. In the Bracero program, Mexican citizens of the ages 14 and up were able to work. The program offered many benefits. Some of these benefits consist of the same amount of payment as a native, ensured employment for three-fourths of the contract period, sanitation, free housing, decent meals for not a high price, insurance, and free transportation to Mexico when the contract ends. Homeowners often did not meet the requirements, as food, housing, and wages were below the standards. Workers had to go through many screenings within the process of recruitment and crossing the border. Workers were also given a work permit to be able to work and return to their homelands when the permit expires. The Bracero program lasted about 22 years and brought in more than 4 million Mexican workers to work in the United States farms and railroads. One of the recruitment centers was in El Paso, Texas. In the Bracero program, there were set protocols that were set by both the United States and Mexico to protect the workers from discrimination and poor wages. However, there is still discrimination. At one point, the Mexican government refused to allow Texas to recruit braceros due to the discrimination towards the Mexican workers. The minimum wage was 50 cents per hour. The bracero program ended in 1964 due to the treatment towards the workers and concerns about the misuse of the program. The historical and social significance of the bracero program. Many Mexican citizens participated within the Bracero program because it allowed them to gain new knowledge and skills. This also allowed them to gain a higher wage than they did within Mexico. Many workers became stuck in a cycle of working abroad. Many Mexican workers looked for work illegally outside of the program due to the poor conditions and costs. They found employment within the agriculture companies and other lower paying jobs. The Bracero program also had many negative connotations as many U.S. citizens disliked the program. Mexican workers were blamed for taking jobs. The Bracero program came to an end in 1964 due to the rise of civil rights movements with labor and civil rights reformers. The political significance of the Bracero program. Despite the fact that the Bracero program ended in 1964, a program similar to the Bracero program was introduced by President Biden and Mexican President Andres. This program proposed a partnership between the United States and Mexico that allowed Mexican and Central Americans to work in the United States. It was based on the Bracero program. The new program would reduce immigration, increase border security, and help increase economy within the United States and Mexico. This new Bracero program was approved. In this video, it shows some experiences from some former braceros.
Me llamo Jesús Colmenero y ahorita tengo 85 años. 85 years now. Yeah. Yeah.
We arrived at Rio Vista, 500 to 600 braceros every day. We got into a long line.
No participando
At one point, you went into a place where there were two people with those things on their shoulders. They called them fumigators. We got completely covered with white powder, completely covered with white. Then we went to wash it off.
a la esta.
Yes, they took advantage of us. In the county of Pecos in Texas, they had a reputation for killing people. That was the law of the pistol, nothing more.
Ahorita tengo 85 años.
There was a young guy the judge wanted to kill because they said he stuck up for poor people. And later, they took a shot at him, then put him on his feet. He had to walk away.
Al 60.
In 1960, I moved from Texas to San Jose. I washed dishes, gardened, and got a job at a cannery that lasted many years until the cannery closed. During that time, I got my citizenship too and raised my family. I have a pension now. My labors are complete, and all my children graduated from school and have good jobs. Thanks to the United States, I realized the golden dream. I've realized the golden dream. Fidel, like almost all the men I've met, is grateful for the life here that was made possible because of the Bracero program, and would rather not recount his negative experiences. In his words, I don't eat from a plate and then talk about the plate I'm eating from. Instead, he talks about another part of the story.
Yo tuve dos, tres.
I was poor in Mexico. I lived in poverty. I couldn't even manage to pay for a cup of coffee. The poverty was so bad that I lost 3 children in 1 year. They died because I had no money for medical care to save them. If you've got money, then you eat, get medical care, everything. But if you don't, you're in the hole, you die. I will never forget it. 1 son and 2 daughters, they all died on me. One was already talking. He said, Papa. He said, Papa, and then he died. And the last one was a little girl named Carmelita. She died talking too, because I didn't have the money to save her. Because of this, I cursed the government of Mexico. And he warns about some of the corrupt profiteers who are attracted by a guest worker program. What I'm telling you is true. The Bracero program was a business. For each work permit, the Mexican lawyers, middlemen, and government would charge 300 to 400 pesos. They were robbing us. You had to pay or they would not give you a contract. They got rich on us. There were a lot of people making money.
What are gasoline baths? For decades, U.S. health authorities used noxious, often toxic chemicals to sanitize Mexicans seeking to cross the border into the United States. Besides these chemicals, they also used gasoline. This was happening in El Paso, Texas. Right here we have a picture of Jose Burciaga, and we have a quote from an interview that he had in 1917, and it says, "At the customs bath bridge, they would spray some stuff on you. It was white, and it would run down your body. How horrible. And then I remember something else about it. They would shave everyone's head. Men, women, everybody." All immigrants from the interior of Mexico, and those whom U.S. customs officials deem second-class residents of Juarez, were required to strip completely, turning their clothes to be sterilized in a steam dryer and fumigated with hydrocyanic acid, and stand naked before a customs inspector who would check his or her hairy parts, scalp, armpits, chest, genital area, for lice. Those found to have lice will be required to shave their heads and body hair with clippers and bath with kerosene and vinegar. Disinfection plants. This is a floor plan of El Paso disinfection plant, a facility built in 1910, but greatly expanded in 1916. In 1917, the plant became a mandatory stop for all immigrants entering the U.S. from Ciudad Juárez, an edict that prompted the bath riots by Mexican women on the international bridge over the Rio Grande. The riots soon subsided, and Mexicans were forced to undergo washing and examinations at the hands of U.S. technicians. The processing stages included washing all clothes and baggage, stripping them naked, delousing, physical examinations, and a smallpox vaccination. Once this regimen was complete, they were given a certificate affirming their cleanliness, but were still subject to exclusion based on perceived physical and mental deficiencies. On average, this facility inspected about 2,830 people every day. According to historian of medicine Alexander Minestern, this disinfection plant reflected the merging of sanitarism and eugenics, two distinct sciences that combine to homogenize Mexicans into distinct and identifiable race. This disinfection plant and examinations were thus a form of biopower that in the process of cleaning Mexicans also racialized them, transforming them from diseased aliens into desirable low-wage laborers. Here's a picture of the disinfection plants of how they looked. The gasoline bath riots. The riots began on January 28, 1917, when a maid Carmelita Torres and others refused to take the disinfecting bath. Onlookers began protesting, sparking what became known as the bath riots. The Mexican housekeepers who revolted had good cause to be upset. Inside a brick disinfecting building under the bridge, health personnel had been secretly photographing women in the nude and posting the snapshots in a local cantina. The U.S. and Mexican troops eventually stopped the riot and young Carmelita was arrested. Also, a year prior to the incident, a group of prisoners in the El Paso jail died in a fire while being sanitized with gasoline. I have included a YouTube video where it explains everything that happened during the gasoline bath riots, if you guys would like to watch it.
The historical significance of the gasoline baths. In 1951, Thomas Callaway was elected as mayor of El Paso, Texas. He began a campaign to open health centers to help immigrants. The mayor stated that the Mexican people were bringing typhus into the United States. You might be asking yourself, what is typhus? Typhus is an infectious disease caused by riddlings characterized by a purple rash, headaches, fever, and usually historically a cause of high mortality was during the wars and famines. There are several forms of transmitting this disease by vectors of lice, ticks, mites, and rats. Thomas. Political significance of the gas line baths. In 1916, Thomas Callaway Lee Jr. was re-elected as mayor. Despite his hard ways of handling the typhus situation, people saw a change in his work and chose to re-elect him. Thomas used his connections to speed up the process by connecting with the senators in Washington, D.C. and expressing his feelings of wanting to open health centers for immigrants to quarantine in. Over 100,000 Mexicans were deluised at the border alone in 1917. After 1917, a higher head tax of literacy required imposed for entry promoted more people to try to enter illegally. The social significance of gas line baths. According to one official of the United States Public Health Service in Paso, typhus problem was not significantly worse than that many other major cities in the United States in 1917. There were 31 cases of typhus reported in the United States in 1917, and in Paso reported only 3 cases of typhus-related fatalities. Despite valid efforts to eradicate typhus along the the US-Mexican border, it continued to spread for decades. Mexican laborers were still sprayed with DDT before entering the US under the guesswork Bracero problem during the 1950s. Due to the fact that the paranoia didn't just focus on physical contamination but also genetic and cultural contamination. Mexican men began working on US farms and railroads as a consequence of the new labor agreement called the Bracero problem, and border disinfection became more frequently. Mexican workers were defrauded of their jobs when Mayor Thomas Callaway failed to dilute baths, vaccinate, and wash their clothes, and bagging every 8 days before crossing the border.
This concludes our presentation. Thank you for watching.